All right, so we have Kenneth, Travis, and Sean Zalmanoff here. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Coach Nate.
Yep, thanks for having us.
Yeah, you bet. So you guys came through one of our programs back in November called Man Wealth Immersion, and have stayed in the conversation inside of our Ascension program as well. But you guys are up to big things on your own as well inside of the mortgage industry and inside of mortgage coaching as well. You've built quite the business in a short amount of time, and definitely are leaders not only in your industry but in life as well. And so excited to have you guys here. And the first question that I want to throw out there for both of you to get started is, the name of the podcast is Championship Leadership. And I always like to ask my guests, what comes to mind when you hear that championship leadership? Like, what do you think of? What does that mean to you? It's a term that really I just kind of made up. A coach of mine came up with it. At first I was like, I don't know if I like that, but it's kind of stuck.
You want to take it first, Sean? Or?
Yeah, sure. So when somebody asks me this question, what championship leadership, the championship mindset, I mean, first thing it is having a set of ideals that you'd be willing to share with anybody and be proud of. And then the next most important thing is embracing those, embodying those, and living those, as we talk about in our world every single day. Connecting with your family, connecting spiritually, providing income for your family, being physically fit. And it's living that so other people see exactly what you're doing. It's about being the change. It's like we often talk about, wanting to change other people, and it'd be so nice if they did this or they did that. But when we embrace it and we embody it first and live it, then we pull people along with us as, not kicking and screaming, but because they see a new way of doing things, or they see that it's possible and they want to live that way too.
Yeah, I love that. So a little bit more of a, not necessarily, maybe a more in all areas of life, not just necessarily in business. So I love that. Yeah. Thank you. KT, what do you got?
Yeah, Sean took the words right out of my mouth. That's why I let him go first, because I knew he had something awesome.
That's not possible to take words out of
you. Yeah, I just want to echo everything that Sean said, but at the same time, for me, when I hear championship leadership, to me, it's the transformation. It's doing the impossible. It's living a way that people don't think or believe can be done. And it's the transformation. It's the change that happens that transforms us to be able to live the impossible every single day of our lives and just be very powerful in that way and be different, because like the word leadership, when we use that word, it's thrown around so easily. And when I hear the word leadership, it's like, I think of all the great, sports coaches out there. And man, there's not many of them, right? Like there's so many coaches out there, but like, it's just, the word is so loosely used that to me, man, it's like being like the 2% that's out there. So leadership for me is like living completely different. Like you live like no one else lives when you live in this way. And so not just talking about it or like pretending to be this, but like to genuinely, because you got to do it. That being a leader is done a lot of times in quiet.
Yeah.
Like no one's looking. And so for me, it's living differently and doing what most people think is impossible.
Yeah, I like that. That's the leader that leads in, quietly, that doesn't necessarily look for the accolades, and just is there to lead, to guide towards this vision, to bring and lift up a bunch of other people and bring them together to get where you want to go. So yeah, thank you. Let's talk about who are some of the championship leaders. So you said, in athletics, like when you talked about that, I started to think football and, someone like Nick Saban or Bill Belichick. Those are kind of the two that really.
Those are my top two. Yeah, I was just thinking of.
6 national championships, 5 Super Bowls, been to 8 for Bill Belichick. Won a few as an assistant coach too, and just, the top of the top championship leaderships, no question. Who are some of the championship leaders that you've had inside of your life that maybe have helped guide or mold you to be the person you are? Like, so for those listening, not necessarily watching or that don't know you, KT, you were a Marine, and they say once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. So there's no such thing as a former Marine, I believe is what they say. Is that right? And then Sean, yeah, tell us a little bit about yourselves, maybe where you came from and some of the leaders that you've had along the way, the championship leaders in your life that have kind of helped to mold and guide you to who you are today.
Go ahead first, KT.
So, there's been several, and, graduating from high school at, the young age of 18, I went into the Marine Corps, and I had a gunnery sergeant that was one of probably the first hugely impacted my life. He was in his 50s, and he could run like no one I'd ever seen before in my life. And he was so mentally tough. He was so fit. He looked like David Goggins is who he looked like physically. And I was just always so impressed with his mental toughness and how he drove us in a way that had us believing that we could do things that were impossible. And things that you got to understand, in the Marine Corps, they break you down physically and mentally, and then they build you back up and make you believe that you can do things that you really are probably going to die for, right? Or like they make you feel as though you're invincible. And when you get to that level of mental toughness, right, you do regress a little bit, like when you get back to the civilian world, but you're still, it's all a measuring stick. You're compared to who? If you compare yourself to other civilians, you're head and shoulders mentally tougher than what most people are, just from that experience in your life. And so, I believe in the strongly that the top 5 people that you hang around the most are the more influential and push you and drive you. I know that, I do CrossFit every day or 6 days a week. And then I get around other people who look at me and it's like, oh my gosh, man, you are killing it. You wore us out, man. You smoked us. Yeah, in this circle I did, but like in that circle at CrossFit, that's not necessarily the case. There's 3 or 4 guys that smoke me, and it's all who we hang out with. But Nate, you've been influential for me. Coach Tim has been influential for me. I've had other coaches in the mortgage industry that's been influential to me over the years, and it's just consistently growing and we all every good coach needs a coach. Every good student needs a coach, and you never stop learning. You never stop investing in yourselves, and you're always looking for examples and stories that happen out there that we can relate to and implement in our lives. And so and I'm sure I could come up with a lot of stories or circumstances that have been impactful. But for time's sake purposes, I mean, that's the best I've got for that question.
Yeah. So before we go to Sean here, I want to come back to the gunnery sergeant. So how often do you think of him, or when it is most often that you would what kind of situations in life are you in where you think back to him and you're like, oh man?
So I think about him all the time. So like when I'm physically in pain and I'm pushing through a threshold, or I hear him in my head saying, come on, Travis, because he had a heavy accent. He wasn't from the United States originally, but he had this very heavy accent. And he pushed me so hard because I had probably the most potential physically in my battalion. And I was the top runner in that battalion. This was years ago, since I was 19 years old. But I just remember him always saying, come on, Travis, and he was pushing me, and I always hear his voice in my head to this day. I know that sounds weird. You know what? I've never told anybody that before. No,
I believe it. Yeah.
I'll share that, but I just hear him in my head often. And it's not just when I'm pushing physical threshold. Sometimes I hear him in my head, when I'm just going through a tough time, because the reality is, it's like we all go through storms, like all of us do, right? And if you ever notice, like some people go through storms and they're not mentally tough, and then you have others that are mentally tough and they go through them. It's a lot easier when you have the mental, capability of enduring things that most people like seem like you hear, like I hear people complain, oh man, I'm just going all my life. I'm like, man, that's weak, man. That's weak sauce. Like, yeah. But anyway, but when you're mentally tough, man, and you're able to, we can do so much more we think we can.
Yeah.
So just
I love it. Thank you. Yeah. So Sean, let's come to you. Championship leaders. Who comes to mind for you?
Well, so first of all, so KT, you're just talking about like this mental toughness, man, and mental toughness and discipline go hand in hand with each other. It is so amazing, all the people that I've known in my life, that literally a fine thread separates them and the difference in outcomes of where they're at. And I think so much of that goes back to discipline and mental toughness. I mean, the number one thing that truly been for me, I've always been blessed and fortunate to have amazing friends. The 5 people that I've hung out with the most through my life have almost always just been rock star, super individuals. Also had the pleasure of having some great coaches, just like yourself, Coach Nate and Coach Satema. But man, for me, it's a little bit different. So when I was growing up, my parents got divorced when I was 7, and from a couple years after that until the time I was 17, I didn't talk to my father. And so we grew up as like the poor people in a middle-class neighborhood. And so I saw all of the things like the club sports, like playing hockey and spring break trips and all these things that my friends did that I was never able to go on any of those things or do those activities. And so I started working early. I was delivering papers when I was 13 years old, and, got a job at the grocery store at 15 and a half, like the day that they would hire me. And it just created this drive inside of me, because I knew that I never wanted that for my family when I grew up. I mean, I know KT, you and I've talked about this a lot. You grew up a lot the same way, and it changed me. Like I grew up so much earlier than most people grow up, because my 4-year-old now, like, Dad, just buy it. Just, he has no concept of, I try to, he's 4. I'm trying to teach him the value of money, and like, we just can't buy things because we break them. Fortunately, we can, but trying to teach that. And so it just enabled me to have a different outlook, a different drive, and a different perspective on life that was really great, but something that I don't wish for my children.
Yeah. Yeah. So you coming from a standpoint of, my dad was my actual dad, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and it's weird because I never think about him because he was just never there. But yeah, how that shaped you as a leader, as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a business person, driven because you didn't want to be that or do that when you were the father, the husband, and older in the stage of life that we are today. And so, to take the lack of a true leader that you should have in your father to help you become the leader you are today. So, that's a different perspective, but I think
we've mended. I mean, he's a part of my life and everything now, but it's just, we're friends. Or if anything, he's just proud of, the way that I turned out, and maybe, I think I help him a little bit even more at this point now.
Well, that's great. That's good to hear that you guys do have that relationship today. Let's talk. It's come up. You've both said it. So, the 5 people that you hang around the most are a direct reflection of really kind of where you're at in life, right? And so there's 5 of you inside of Next Level Loan Officers, which is your coaching program, right?
Yeah.
And I want to talk just a little bit about how that all came together. And so essentially you have 5 leaders. And I know how challenging it can be to have one partner in business. How does that work with 5 strong leaders together in a room and trying to create a direction to go together and running this successful coaching practice that you have? Maybe tell us a little bit about Next Level and in the beginnings, because you just started it up earlier this year, and the direction you're going, and some of the challenges that there can be inside of having 5 owners, 5 leaders, and what that brings to the table.
So it's funny because every single person that we talk to and say that there's 5 of us, there's like, yeah, but who owns it? Who does? Like, no, it's all of us. We're all doing it. Nobody has just believes that it just runs like it runs. And that, I mean, it just does. Like, we all love each other. I mean, we've known each other from anywhere from 12 to 6 to 3 years. So there was a lot of bond that was built beforehand. A previous organization that we were involved with, the way some things ended there helped build and fortify the bond that we had. And so it just gave us a platform to move forward with on a way that we knew what we wanted to deliver. And man, we all have big egos, but when we're talking, nobody steps on anybody. I mean, we definitely have some difference of opinions, but I mean, everything gets worked through, I mean, with relative ease, honestly. I mean, you just all respect each other and it just works.
Yeah, I'll echo a little of that. It's actually very interesting because you put 5 roosters in a cage, you think that they're going to fight fairly often. And to Sean's point, we don't always agree, but it's interesting because we have this chemistry that naturally that was organic and that just happened. And Sean was talking about a previous organization that we were with and coaching group. We came to a point where, we just wanted to be able to create something more than what we had within that organization. And I had left that group. Couple weeks later, Sean left this group, and then Sean and I started talking, and then someone else had left this organization. Well, we started having conversations about, hey, what would it look like? Now, this was a year and a half ago. Like, this was a while back. And, in December, we decided that, hey, we're pulling the trigger on this. And we actually launched it in December of this, 2017. And so here we are about 8 or 9 months down the road. And it's just amazing how far we've come in such a short period of time, and the people that we've been able to help, and the lives that we've started to change, and the coaching that we've gotten from people has been life-changing in the way that we've learned to manage our egos and our pride, and how to power relate, and all of these things that we've learned inside being surrounded with awesome people like you, Nate. It's really I think that has had a lot to do with some of our success. At least I think that there's to validate that, but like, I don't know how we did it, the 5 of us. Like, even now today, I will tell you, we have regular meetings. We meet twice a week for about 45 minutes to an hour every single week, twice a week. We get through that. We delegate. We've outsourced a lot of things because we do run mortgage company, our successful mortgage companies, high producing shops. And so it's a lot of time, energy, and effort goes into that. And so if you'd have told me a year ago that I was going to have 5 partners in a consulting coaching platform in the mortgage industry, I just said that you were smoking crack, because I'm not a partner. Like, I don't like partners. I like to do that. I have my way of doing things. I'm very, I'm very matter of fact. I just have my way of doing things. Doesn't mean they're right. It's just my way. But again, to the point, it's chemistry that I can't explain. And, we can say God had his hand in on it. I don't know, but like, it's, it works for us. And now we're to a point where I notice other people noticing it and having conversations that Sean just suggested. And so now I was like, I want to make it a point even more so that, hey, this is like, this is different, guys. Like, this is special. And people seem to relate, or be awed by it. And so they can, they get 5 different personalities and 5 different people, because there's not one of us that are the same in any way, shape, or form at all. Like, we're completely all different. So we all
absolutely. I've had the chance to meet every one of you, and it's impressive. It's impressive just because of what we're talking about. It's like you all are very successful, still running your own mortgage companies all over the country. You're all spread out, and St. Louis. 2 of you in Texas, 1 in Kansas City, and 1 out in Seattle.
Yeah, two in Texas, 2 in Kansas City, and 1 in Seattle.
Okay.
And it's interesting. Like, if the series of events didn't happen how they happened, and we didn't meet each other how we all met each other, it's not something that you could just put 5 roosters in a room and make it work. And 3 of the 5 of us had the benefit of going through immersion last November. Yes. So as we were rolling it out and as we were deciding exactly the full platform, there was a lot that we picked up inside of there to progress us forward on exactly what we wanted to do. But I was thinking about an army when you were just talking about 5 roosters in a cage, man. And it's not like 5 roosters fighting each other, man. It's 5 roosters back to back, shoulder to shoulder. And, we all have each other's backs, defending the flank and making sure that we just all have each other. And that's really the difference of how we view ourselves, I think, versus when people are like, there's 5 of you, they think the fighting's in versus all of us facing out.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So as a leader, it can be easy to want to lead from the front. And I've had conversations with other guests on here about, leadership and what that really means. And it's a little bit different for everyone, but one of the great qualities I think of a leader is not always having to be in the lead, if you would. And obviously that has to happen for you guys. So what are some things, because KT, you talked about it. I own a mortgage company. I don't want partners, and I've experienced bad partnerships myself. And I kind of feel the same way unless you really just have someone that you're on the same page with it. And that's hard to find. So what are some things that you have to find yourself doing differently when it's just you and leading your team in your mortgage industry and in East Texas than it is when you come into this room of 5 roosters to really allow it to work the way it has?
Yeah. So I think some of the stuff is just really love. Like, a lot of it's love. A lot of it's, and when I say love, I'm talking about unconditional love. Forgiveness plays a lot of role in that. Just really dropping the ego at the door. I don't look at these guys as like partners, man. I look at them as family, right? And I know that sounds cliche-ish, but man, that's how I feel. Like, I feel like they're family. I feel like we've known some of us. Well, we've all known each other for years, but for several years, 3 or 4 or 5 years. But I can feel the bond continuing to grow, and they're becoming brothers to me, right? And so some of the things that I think is that we have to realize in each other, or for me, is just to drop the ego and leave it at the door, right? It's not about me. It's about the group. It's about serving people. It's about helping people, right? So that's the overall agenda, right?
Yeah.
And so when you can grasp that, you can understand like your why behind doing what you're doing, and holding on to the values such as unconditional love, forgiveness, perspective, and trying to understand another person's perspective and or where they're coming from. And these guys help me level up. Like, when I see one of them say or produce something or create something that's valuable, I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Well, what do you think that does? We're all competitive, right? We're all roosters. Well, man, that just makes me want to level up and try to, go and provide more value to make sure that I'm keeping up with them, and then vice versa. Like, they're trying to keep up with me or Sean or Shane or DC or Kellen. But like, it's, we all know, we've all been able to identify what our strengths are, right? We've all been able to, like me, I'm the face of the organization right now. I'm just kidding, but inside joke. But I like to think that I'm the better looking of the 4, but Sean and I are fighting.
Keep telling yourself that story, man.
But like, we all have something that we're really good at, right? And then there are things that Kellen does that I absolutely refuse to do. But he likes it, he enjoys it, he's good at it. And there's things that Shane's good at that I refuse to do. And there's things that I'm really good at and Sean's really good at that they refuse to do. Like, they're just not. And so we've really been able to sit down and identify what our strengths are and working to our strengths as a group. Just dropping the ego. And man, did we get along all the time? No, not all. We don't always agree. We get along all the time, but we don't always agree. And when we don't agree, we're just respectful enough and loving enough to, to get our point across and to hear someone's perspective. And then if villains if they've ever gotten hurt, then we just clean it up. And it may take a day or two, but we'll go back and clean it up. We've had a ruffle before, and we've cleaned it up. And like we just made agreements that, moving forward, if we ever have a ruffle again, or if something ever happens, then we'll just be open and honest with each other and make that agreement. And so we've made some like really solid agreements as a group, not just one, several agreements that we all live by. And when you make these agreements, I think it's made us better as a group. And like we're very clear and we communicate very well. And I think that those are the types of things that you have to have in a partnership. That goes over in your mortgage company or whatever business you're in. Living in agreements and not expectations, I think, has been really big for us.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah, not just in your business, but with your wife, with your friends, family, with all of it. And the, one of the key things that KT, you mentioned is it's the communication. So we have 2 meetings a week. We're all constantly talking because, Shane and Kellen are working on something. So they're constantly talking on projects. The rest of us are all talking on different projects that we're working on, or, hey, I'm doing this. I want to bounce this off you. And I kind of look at it, as far as, how 5 people can work together in this, it's like a rock band, like if you've seen some band that's stood the test of time. I'm not a huge Pearl Jam fan, but everybody on here has heard of Pearl Jam at least once in their life. They've been touring for like 25 years. Yeah. Eddie Vedder has been the front man, but, other people can sing and step in. And, it's just everybody really has a good idea of their place. But, man, it just doesn't work without all of them. And so you need people who can step in, people who can lead from whatever spot that they're at the time. And, if I need somebody to step up, I know they're there for me. And you really see that like when we have our Summit Club events and we have our live events for, just to train a massive amount of loan officers, like the chemistry is just there and people get to see that from day one. And that's just something, you can fake a lot of things, but you just can't fake chemistry and love that people have for each other.
Yeah. Yeah. What I really hear from both of you is, putting the ego aside, leaving it at the door, like KT said, and then with 5 strong leaders inside of the same room, it's also just keeping the business or the vision of next level loan officers in front of everything else. And that's what really matters. And you guys caring as people and leaders about the men and women that are coming and investing in their time, energy, and money to travel and to learn from you and to grow. And you realizing that and what's really at stake and to be able to set that aside to fulfill what it is that you're trying to do inside of that. So that's really powerful, especially when it comes to leadership. And that's obviously why you guys have been able to have such great success in the short amount of time. So it's been fun to watch.
And the thing that really makes us different there is most of the mortgage coaching organizations, the people leading those have not originated a loan in a decade or 2 decades.
Yeah.
So like all 5 of us are running incredibly successful mortgage businesses. We're in the trenches day in and day out with our clients, with our loan officers. So there's everything that we hear. We get to learn just as much to be able to bring back and help our people, but the day-to-day activities, what's going on as the market changes, and 2018 has definitely been an interesting year in the market. It would be very hard, in my opinion, to not be actively involved in the mortgage business and be coaching people in 2018.
Yeah, that's huge, right?
Yeah, it's perspective. And it's not to knock the other mortgage coaches out there or platforms. It's
absolutely.
It's just saying that it's just a different perspective when you continue to live in the trenches. And, sometimes we're at a disadvantage, and And that's what drives us to work harder, because like now we're not only at a disadvantage because a lot of these platforms, that's their full-time thing. And we're over here managing this, our mortgage offices and doing the coaching full-time. And man, that's not an easy task. And so the 5 of us have to we have to show up and we have to deliver value. And man, we're going to make a statement in the mortgage industry, coaching. There's no doubt. Like we will have the most beneficial, most powerful, most successful, most beneficial to the loan officer, just coaching platform in the market. Like that's what we're doing.
Yeah. So. And you're married and you got kids and everything else on top of that. And and keeping it all together and not just keeping it together, but kicking ass and thriving inside of that. Let's talk, think about a time in your life is there a time in your life where, building maybe early on in the mortgage days and building what you have, or maybe it was before getting whatever led you to the mortgage industry, but what's a time in your life where, you could have basically said, screw this just isn't in the cards for me. This isn't working. This isn't going to happen. A time when because when I think of a leader, like there's moments, we all have them in our life, these defining moments. And one of the great characteristics of a leader is to really be able to take decisive action, extreme, execution in the moments when the bullets are flying over our head, if you will, like in the chaos. The leaders will stand tall and not wilt under the pressure. And those that aren't great leaders, it's not good or bad. It's just that, their natural tendency would be to take the easy path or to hide under the couch until everything is clear again. And so is there a moment in both of your lives, as I'm kind of talking about this, that's really that defining moment where you took a stand and made that decisive decision to go the path that wasn't the easy one that led you to where you are today?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was officially out in 2002, and I remember I was officially out in like February of 2002, but I had taken some leave early, and had a couple of months of leave saved up, and they were paying me while I was, early termination or early leave. And I went and opened up a cell phone store, 2 of them actually in my hometown, and I started working those with another guy. And at the end of this, long story short, it just didn't work out. And shortly after, I sold it to him, and I moved to Longview, Texas. That's where I live today. And I was dating my wife at the time, and I had an opportunity to come to Longview, and she lives in a small community called Gilmer, Texas. And so when I got this offer to come to Longview, Texas, my first question is just like, it was an hour and a half away. I said, how far is that from Gilmer? And it was like basically 15 minutes. It's like, great, my girlfriend's there. That's a great opportunity. So I came out here, and I had $2,500 in my pocket, what I had. And I had a truck payment of about a little over $300 a month. I had a apartment that I had rented. It was a little over $400 a month. And that's all I had was $2,500 for my name, and I had to make this mortgage thing work. And so I was in the mortgage business, starting in the mortgage business, worked for a broker who told me, fake it till you make it. And that didn't work for me. I'm not wired that way. I came from the Marine Corps. I had some leadership, in my days, and I knew that wasn't going to work for me. And so I just started educating myself and learning about this business. I went 4 months without making a dollar. And I remember thinking in those 4 months, man, this has got to work. Like, it's fight or flight, and I ain't flying because I don't have a plan B. And sometimes I think that when we don't have a plan B and we don't have something to fall back on, that it forces us to do the impossible and to do things that we sometimes think that we can't do, or others think that we can't do. And so I never allow myself to have a plan B when it comes to business and things in my life. Like, when I set my mind to doing something, I do it. Have you ever noticed when people from other foreign countries or from foreign countries come to the United States with 2 pennies in their pocket and they do whatever it takes to be successful. That was the mindset I adopted. I said, man, these people come from all over the world to the United States with nothing. I want to be that. I want to be that success story. And I just remember in those 4 months that I did the things that were hard. I went to work at 6:30 in the morning. I stayed till 6:30 or 7 at night. I did the work. I studied. I learned I crafted my scripts. I crafted my conversations. I did nothing. I ate ramen noodles. And like, I know that's another cliche, but I did. Like, that's what I did. It's the only thing. I'd watched enough movies to know that ramen noodles were like very inexpensive, right? And I'd eaten enough of them in the Marine Corps to know that I could get them for 20 cents. And so I had a stack of ramen noodles. That's what I ate every single night. I didn't have money to go out and eat. I didn't have any spare money. I got to a point to where I had to go to my girlfriend, which is now my wife, and borrow $850 from her so I could make my rent payment, make my apartment payment, right?
Yep.
And I just kept hustling. I kept grinding, but I just remember that, man. Like, I don't forget that.
Yeah, you bring that up. You've said that story. Tell us what she said to you that around that time.
Yeah. So one of the things that she wanted me to do is she wasn't playing. She said, why don't you go get a job at Sonic or Walmart? They're hiring. So she had gone through the Sonic drive-through and seen that they were hiring. And she's like, man, you go work at Sonic KT and you will own a store one day because you work so hard. Yeah, that don't work for me. I ain't working at no Sonic. If there's anything wrong with Sonic, it just wasn't.
Yeah.
What I was gonna do. And McDonald's and Walmart as well. And she says, I don't care, just be a greeter. Like, you're not making any money. And it was shortly after that, I think it was probably within 3 weeks of her loaning me the $800 $850, whatever it was, that I had made my first commission check for $29,000. And that's when I knew I was onto something, and that I knew that the previous months weren't for nothing. To sacrifice everything that I had gone through. And it's more than just the ramen noodles. It was the studying. It was doing the work. It was listening. It was just reading books. It was man, this got to work. And I think that that's what a lot of people fail to do, is they fail to do the work. They don't want to know about the details of what I had to do and the sacrifices. They don't sacrifice anything. Anything worth doing is going to be freaking hard. Right. But
yeah.
And I think about next level as another example. Like, I've never worked so hard in my life in the last 10 years. Like, this is the last year and a half is I've worked harder than I've ever worked. But I know that it's going to pay off down the road. But it's a 3-year deal. It's a 3-year payoff.
Mm-hmm.
You got to build it. It's just like in our businesses, we have to build it. A lot of people get in the mortgage business and they just want to they just want to show up and get paid and not doing any of the work and think that they're going to be successful. And that's not how business works. Any successful businesses, like when you go back to the early days or the founders and you say, hey, how did you do it? Like, it was guerrilla work, man. It was like rolling up the sleeves and actually getting dirty and doing the work and learning. And no one ever sees that. They forget about the labor pains. They don't see the labor pains. They just see the baby and they think, oh, I want a baby. I want to be successful, and that shit don't work that way. That's not how it is. But anyway, that's part of my story, and I just to Sean's point earlier, I came from a poor family. I came from an abusive mother. My father wasn't in the picture. My stepdad helped raise me. They lived paycheck to paycheck. There were 8 of us in the house growing up. I mean, it was, we fight over food,
Yeah.
And of course I didn't know that I was poor, but, until I started getting older, but, I didn't have an option for college at the time. I put myself through the Marine Corps, and, I hear a lot of people out there, Nate, that so many excuses in life, man, why people aren't successful or they don't have a job or somebody's holding them back. And I get pissed off about it. I'm like, man, that's BS. You can be anything and do anything you want so long as you put your mind to it, okay? And you work within your talents,
yeah.
right? like I'm not going to be an NFL player. I know that, right?
Yeah.
Anything that's achievable and like, reasonable,
Yeah.
But yeah, I just get irritated with people like that, because they're mentally weak, or they come from a culture, right? That's maybe generational, that tells them that they can't be great. It's just not true. You just have to be willing to do shit that's hard. Like go to the Marine Corps.
Right.
That shit's hard to do,
Absolutely. Yeah. So, man, that is a powerful story. And, it made me think, we have clients that we coach and that want to do what we do and want to be coaches. And, we had this high paid coach event. And one of the comments was, I just want to coach. Like, that's the fun stuff, right? That's the easy stuff. Like that's what I feel called to do. But then there's all this other stuff around it. Like, you got to actually go market, advertise, communicate a message, fill events, like get people that will actually pay you, that you can help and provide the actual coaching that you just want to do. And so what they're really saying is, I don't want to do all the hard stuff that is required to be a coach. And in this example, one of our clients, like, we're going to do this. I'm going to be a coach. I'm quitting my job. I'm going all in. And then literally like 2 months later, going back to work. And not really, like you said, you didn't have a plan B. You can't have a plan B. If you have a plan B in the back of your head, like this guy does, he knows that he can just go pick up the tool belt and go back out and work, and basically really selling his dreams, because he's not willing to take a stand for himself to do what it is that he says he wants. And maybe he just truly doesn't want it. But yeah, so that just made me think of that as you're going through that. And
if it's okay, I want to add to that. It's like, we find a lot of people want it now. Yeah. Right? And it's not a now process. It is a process that's lengthy and takes time. And even as we do it, Sean can contest to this, like, we get better, right? We recraft, like Sean and I are getting better. Like, we are growing and we're becoming better, and our message is getting more precise and to the point. And like, we're developing ourselves in this way to be better coaches. And so it's not an event, man. It's a marathon, dude. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's a long process. And so it's just interesting, because it's like, a lot of people, I think, are underfinanced, or just set unrealistic expectations for what they want. It just takes time. I mean, you guys know. I mean, I know y'all know, because y'all put a lot of time, energy, and effort into it. So.
Yeah, you got to suck a little bit in the beginning, or a lot of it in the beginning. So yeah,
especially when there's 5 of you. Yeah, we got to move 5 times as fast.
Yeah. Yes. Sean, let's come to you. What about you? What's that moment in your life that maybe was that big turning point for you, especially as a leader, to grow to be where you are today?
Don't share the band camp story.
So, man, there's been quite a few different instances, and had I not known that I was going to be successful since the time I was 7 or 8 years old, if I had just had to make that choice now at 40, and that would have been a lot more difficult, because like KT was talking about, of not having a plan B. And I just think it really comes down to 2 different types of people in your life. A quote that I heard years and years ago, that's probably my favorite quote of my life, is, life gets better when you get better. And I see 2 types of people. I own a few rental properties, and man, it is more clear with tenants than I think it is with anyone else. I mean, if you accept responsibility for what happens to you, and you realize that maybe if there's only a 1% chance that you could have done something to affect that change differently, but you accept that and embrace it, and going forward, know that you have that. Or, man, but KT's doing that, but man, that's because he's lucky. That's because, man, he just sounds funny. Everybody likes him, and so it's just something that you have to have and make that decision. And like, for me, like the whole, I mean, I've still never met to this day one person that woke up and said, man, I want to be in the mortgage business. nobody's ever said, there's been some realtors from, their parents being realtors and stuff like that have said that, but I've never met anybody who said that in the mortgage world. And so I had, so I graduated college in 2000, and right at, all my friends, I was running a restaurant and a bar, and I had summers off to travel and have fun. And I mean, I was making more money than all my friends were making. And so I didn't leave college. I stayed and worked there, and all my friends are coming back 3 months later, 6 months later saying, man, you made the best decision of your life. It sucks out there. And so, I mean, I interviewed for job after job, and then all of a sudden, 9/11 happened. And it was, it was a crazy wake up call in so many ways. First of all, I had the fortune of traveling in Europe the summer before, and no one will ever be able to travel as carefree as I did that time.
Yeah.
So it started making me reflect a lot. And then all of a sudden we went back into work after, we shut down for a couple of days, and as everyone was just kind of figuring things out, and nobody showed up. Like the stock market tanked so much in that short time that all of these kids that were coming in that just had all this money to spend, man, it wasn't trickle down economics. I talked about, man, the faucet was on and then it was off. And so then I was like, well, damn, I actually better go do something besides, bartend and manage this place. And there was a guy that came in the bar all the time who tried to get me to work for him for like 3 years. And I was like, I need to get out of Columbia. I need to go somewhere else. And he had an office in my hometown. So I went and kind of started working there, and he had every single thing that was wrong with the mortgage business, this company did. Then, so I went and worked for a couple others, and it actually ended up being an account exec. They were all refi shops. And it actually ended up being an account exec one day that came in the office that, we sold loans to them. He was like, man, if you have any chance of ever making it in this business, you better get into the purchase world. And so that was like 2003, 2004. And I was making it by kind of. And so then, man, I started going out and meeting realtors. And I saw my friends who had been in the mortgage business all across the country, subprime just took off at that point. They were getting what I thought at the time rich, making, 2, 3, 4 times the amount of money that I was a month and a year. But it's like, man, Chris told me I got to go get realtors, and I was getting them, and it was slow. But man, nobody was calling on realtors. So I kept getting more and more realtor business. And then all of a sudden, the market collapsed and the Great Recession happened. And of the 30 or so people that I knew in the mortgage business, man, me and another buddy are the only 2 that are left that all graduated college and jumped in it. And so it was that persistence of listening to somebody that I respected a lot, who just, genuinely cared about me and was like, this is what you have to do. And, all of a sudden I built a book of business and really made it about, serving the realtors and serving my clients instead of, how we could refinance somebody to put cash in our pocket, which is a great service to provide for people. It's just not the sustainable way to build a business. Even, as we sit here in 2018, man, like rates historically are at all-time lows, but they're at 7-year highs. And the mortgage business has changed a lot this year. There's been things that have happened in the market, and it's just being able to be like, instead of being that used to work in the past or this or that, man, it's everybody's got to deal with the same set of circumstances. So what am I going to do to strive and achieve and put myself out there and be better to grow? And it's just what I do. Yeah,
that's powerful. Yeah, just that realization, because so many people will think the woe is me, and it's like I'll think of when I played football in college, and let's say it was rainy and the field was muddy, and the team that loses complains about the conditions of the field, and if it was a perfect day, they would have beat us, right? Well, it's like, well, we played on the same exact field that you did. Like, you guys are all in the same. We all have the same rates. We're all in the same industry. Like, let's make some lemonade out of lemons here and just deal with the situation that is at hand versus making the excuses. And that's what a leader does, for sure. We could go on for a long time, I know, inside this conversation, but let's wrap this up. I got one final question for each of you, and really appreciate the time that you're taking, because obviously you guys are extremely busy in your lives building the mortgage companies that you have, and next level loan officers, and your family, and the impact that you guys have inside of your communities. But what would be the one piece of, for our listeners here, for anyone that's listening and learning and trying to grow and become a better leader themselves, what would be the biggest piece of advice you could give to somebody that just wants to become a better leader, wants to take the step from being a leader to a true championship leader in their lives and in their profession or whatever area of life that they are in?
Yeah. I think, one of the things I see in people that are in business or dealing with life is that they just sabotage themselves. Like it goes back to the saying that the story that you tell the most or believe the most is the story that you tell the most. And I think people get overwhelmed. They set aside their dreams. They have lack of clarity. They just don't have the courage to face the truths in their lives or confront the things that are holding them back, and not being honest with themselves about where they want to go. And I think if you can overcome that stuff by being honest with yourself, right, and doing the work, you can start living in a realm of happiness again. And it's not easy to get there, but it's like, that's true talk. Like, that's what it is for me.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
So first of all, I think it begins with, you got to invest in yourself, in whatever way that is for you. You need to invest in yourself. And I think that people spend, this is, I'm going to borrow some words from the Dalai Lama and just kind of rephrase it, man. He talks about like the things that he ponders about humanity, and what surprised him most about humanity. And, people are always living in the future or living in the past and never living in the present. And so, like, what do you want now? Like, not what do you want in the future? What's going to make you happy now? Not comparing yourself to what happened in the past, but what can you do now? And where can you be 2 months from now, 3 months from now? We talk about kind of living in the season. So you're working towards the person that you want to be now, not this ideal of somebody that you're going to be 10 years from now, because that's always going to be 10 years away. 10 years from now, that's going to be 10 years away. So being who you are now and taking those steps on a daily basis to create that for yourself. And it's just, we're talking about running a marathon, man. This marathon of life is, for fortunate 80, 90, 100 years. We have to take action and be there now. That's being present for yourself, for your business, for your family, and for everyone around you. So it's not always about something that you're chasing, that you just keep pushing further down the road.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate it. KT, Sean, thank you so much for being here. And keep doing what you're doing. It's fun to watch, and you guys are championship leaders. So thank you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, Coach Nate.